I've done a lot of night driving in my life, not for work or anything. My old group of friends and I would always stay out until crazy hours when we were in our late teens and early 20s. You could say we were a bit aimless. We thought staying out until 5 a.m. every weekend, hanging out at parks or in parking lots, was cool. Looking back, it was a waste of time. Because of that, I've done my fair share of driving during the night, which is usually when the drunks and crazies are on the roads. One weekend night, it had to be around 4 a.m. I wanted to go home. I drove one of my friends home from the park where we had been hanging out. Before driving myself home, I had to stop for gas. I used to like getting gas at night because there would be no other cars around. I pulled into one of my usual gas stations not far from my parents' house. As I was walking to the building to pay, a short guy wearing a hood walked past me. He stopped and stared at me as I walked by. I said, "What?" as I kept walking. He said nothing, so I kept going. Just a typical weirdo, I thought. I went inside to pay the attendant for my gas and bought a lottery ticket while I was there. I came back outside and started to fill up my car. I looked around, and as expected, it was empty at this hour. Once done, I got back in the car and started driving home. Halfway home, I heard something behind me in the car. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw someone in the back seat looking at me. I let out a scream so loud I probably almost collapsed my lungs. I slammed on the brakes and screamed, "Get out!" It was the guy from the gas station. I opened my doors and started yelling for help, knowing at least a couple of people would come out from their houses. Sure enough, a few porch lights turned on and I saw some doors opening. The guy got out of my car and said, "I could have slit your throat." As some people came out of their houses, he started to run away down the street. I didn't chase after him. A few people came over and asked if I was all right. I told them how a stranger was in my back seat. By then, the guy was out of sight. I wasn't about to start driving around after him. I thanked the people who came out and continued my drive home, making sure I didn't see him anywhere the rest of the way. That was the scariest experience of my life. I worked the night shift at a gas station because I needed extra money and a second job. I had been working there for a few months when this guy started coming in late at night, always around 2 a.m. He was about 6 feet tall with long, stringy hair. He would always buy a tall boy a large can of beer and leave. One night, he asked me my name. I told him, and he kept saying, "Rob, I like that," while laughing to himself. He cracked open the beer he just bought and walked out of the store, talking to himself. He was clearly drunk. I was curious to see if he had been drinking and driving every time he came to the store. I watched as he left and walked out of sight, off the gas station property. That made sense because he never bought gas. He always just bought alcohol. I saw him almost every night after that. Some nights, he was noticeably drunker than others. Sometimes, he would just lean on a shelf and not say anything, always greeting me with a "Hey, Rob," when he came in. One night, he was just leaning on a shelf, drinking the beer he bought and staring at a wall. I finally asked him for his name. He looked at me for a few seconds and said, "Bob." I always felt like Bob was a fake name people use when lying. I wondered if he chose it because it rhymed with my name, but I went with it. I asked, "So Bob, where do you work?" He laughed so loudly it startled me and said he didn't work. He said the government screwed him out of his job. He looked at me with an angry face, but then said, "I like you, Rob. You seem like you know what you're doing." I didn't know what that meant, but he walked out of the store after that. I didn't see him again for over a week, which was unusual for him. Bob always gave me an off, mildly creepy vibe. I figured he was usually drunk, but something was obviously wrong in his personal life. One very stormy night, with fewer customers than usual, because of the storm, I heard the ding of the front door as someone entered. Before looking, I imagined it to be Bob, and I was shocked to see it actually was him, but a much scarier version of him. He was completely soaked, not wearing a rain jacket or using an umbrella. He was just in a dark shirt and jeans, his long hair drenched, standing by the door looking straight ahead at the wall. He looked angry, but his mind seemed elsewhere. The way he was standing there, blankly staring at nothing and completely soaked, freaked me out. I asked, "Bob, are you okay?" He didn't turn his head or move. He stood still and said, "I did something really bad." I asked, "What did you do?" He looked at me and said, "I need somewhere to hide," then walked past me toward the restroom hallway. He disappeared behind the wall, and I heard one of the doors open and close. I was genuinely getting uncomfortable with Bob now. I didn't enjoy his presence whenever he was in the store, and tonight something was extra off about him. He seemed like a zombie, and that "I did something really bad" comment was incredibly creepy. Some time passed, and Bob never came out of the bathroom. I assumed he was wasted again, probably passed out or puking. Either way, I didn't want to intervene. Then the lights went out, and the store was completely dark. I was standing in a pitch-dark gas station during a major storm with an unhinged drunk man. I used the flashlight from behind the counter to make my way towards the back of the store by the inventory storage and the panel board. The door to the back was in the same little hallway as the restrooms. As I walked by the two restroom doors, both of them were ajar, and Bob wasn't in either of them. I went through the door to the back. I was planning on going straight to the panel board, but stopped when I heard a slight dripping in the room somewhere and the squeaking of wet shoes. My heart sank into my stomach. I said, "Bob?" in a very weak and scared voice. I heard squeaks right to my left. When I pointed my flashlight in that corner, there was Bob with his eyes wide open. He lunged at me and started screaming, "I'm gonna kill you." I pushed him off of me as he clawed at my back. I ran back through the door to the front of the store. He didn't follow me. I grabbed my rain jacket and ran straight to my car. I sat in my car as I dialed 911 and spoke to an operator. I stayed on the line with her, and it didn't take long for a couple of police officers to arrive and go inside with me. Bob was still hiding in the back room, huddled in a corner like some rabid creature. His pupils were huge. I only noticed then he was on something. They took him to the station after I told them that he lunged at me, threatened to kill me, and said he did something really bad earlier. I found out over a month later that this Bob guy's real name was Martin. He had brutally beaten his ex-wife to death. It might have happened on that same night he came into the gas station. Long story short, I never wanted to work another night shift at any job ever again after this night.